Hey, what's up guys, it's TotalWarKS here. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys the 5 best Total War titles in 2023. These are all going to be based on my personal experience and will be completely subjective. With that said, let's jump right in. Starting off at number 5, Empire Total War. Released in March 2009 and is set in the time period of the early 18th century. This game has one of the biggest campaign maps within the Total War franchise, containing a large chunk of the world like Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, as well as parts of North America and India, allowing us to experience what a true global superpower can be like. It has a total of 12 factions for us to choose from, including European nations like Great Britain, France, Spain, Russia, etc. It also has Maratha Confederacy that starts out in India, and the United States in America. To unlock the United States as a playable faction, we must first complete the Road to Independence campaign. The core gameplay consists of line infantry units that make use of muskets, with each shot requiring over 10 seconds to reload, firing back and forth against our enemies until one line breaks. These muskets can also later be recharged with a bayonet attached, essentially making it both a musket and a spear. There are artillery units that will inflict massive casualties to infantry if ignored. This is where the cavalry has its role within the battlefield, mainly as a unit to take out enemy artillery, flank line infantry, or contest enemy cavalry. We'll be seeing a lot less melee combat, as it will often be the last resort during a battle for these line infantry units. There is also naval warfare in this game, and is, in my opinion, one of the better ones. There are ships like brigs, frigates, and the heavy first-rate warship that has up to 120 cannons for us to have fun with, allowing us to completely wreck an enemy warship in a single volley. That can be extremely satisfying. I would highly recommend Empire Total War if we are a big fan of the gunpowder era, with the type of units I've mentioned that includes an expansive campaign map. The only comparable game I would say is Napoleon Total War. However, do not be like me, purchasing the game thinking it would be an upgraded version of the Empire Total War. This is absolutely not the case. Firstly, they cover a similar but different time period. In Empire, it starts from 1700 to 1799. In comparison, Napoleon, as the game title suggests, covers only that period briefly between 1805 up to 1812. Even though Empire Total War may seem like it has a longer playtime, but it is almost similar in the amount of turns we will end up playing, as each turn represents 2 weeks in Napoleon, whereas in Empire it represents 6 months. There are also the Napoleon story campaign we must first complete before we are able to play as France in the Grand Campaign. Napoleon Total War being released in 2010 does mean that it has improved graphics and AI, and honestly has one of the best atmospheric look to it out of all the other Total War titles. There are also a better unit variety with specialized units for certain factions, and the campaign map may only consist of Europe, but with a lot more detail in it when compared to Empire. So, which one is better? Overall, I enjoyed Empire Total War more, especially the campaign map experience. However, the battles can get a little boring, and Napoleon's Total War battle gameplay is definitely superior, more polished and more enjoyable. Coming in at number 4, Total War Attila. Released back in February 2015 and is set in the time period of 395 AD, the decline of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the Huns invasion, when the Roman Emperor Theodosius I died, subsequently causing a divide and splitting the empire into 2 halves. With the base game, there are a total of 17 factions to choose from, including the Roman Empires, the Sassanid Empire, the Huns, and several other factions. There are DLCs like the Age of Charlemagne that starts at a different timeline, the early Middle Ages, a medieval period with new factions such as Kingdom of Charlemagne, Kingdom of Mercia, to enjoy a new, refreshed experience if we ever get bored of the vanilla campaign. The campaign map consists of Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Central Asia. There are many unique features in this game, such as the horde mechanic, being able to operate without a fixed settlement, plagues and diseases which can happen at any time that will spread to other provinces if left unchecked, and will need us to build sanitation buildings to help deal with this situation. Family politics. When relations become unstable and dealt with poorly, there may be consequences such as a civil war. The Huns, being one of the factions that starts off as a horde, no longer have a need for a traditional settlement. Instead, we have one directly tied to an army, allowing us to move wherever we want without the need to capture one, to still develop our settlement with steady income and food supply. Some other factions in the game can also take the form of a horde and abandon the old way, However, for the Huns specifically, they are never able to settle in a captured province. Both the Eastern and Western Roman Empire starts off as one of the most daunting campaigns I've ever played, where we are given a huge amount of territory to manage from the get-go. Most of them are unhappy and on the verge of rebelling. This poses as a unique problem to overcome, as our goal is to survive as opposed to expand and conquer like how most starting factions are in the Total War franchise. Comparing Attila to his predecessor, Rome 2, I would personally say Attila is superior in most aspects, including a more challenging campaign experience, battle difficulty, how the AIs behave overall, graphics quality, and more features that we have mentioned earlier, with the exception of optimization and the available factions. For a game like Attila that launched in 2015, it has not received as much post-launch attention from the developers as Rome 2 did. The optimization leaves way more to be desired. The available factions can also be a key factor for which game we should consider. In my opinion, Rome 2's starting factions were a lot more interesting to me than in Attila, but in gameplay, Rome 2 is almost too easy, especially if we pick a faction like Rome, which I'm sure most of us will have tried at least once, with his bread and butter unit, the Roman legionaries. They're an absolute menace that can go up against any armies. There are also some great mods for both these games, such as the Medieval Kingdoms 1212 AD for Attila. Basically turns it into a Medieval Kingdoms Total War. Divide et Impera, a mod for Rome 2 that increases immersion with new features such as food supply and population count in each province. Coming in at number 3, Total War Shogun 2. Released back in March 2011, is set in feudal Japan during the 16th century, a time of great turmoil and conflict known as the Sengoku period. The country is divided into many warring factions, each led by a powerful daimyo who wants to conquer and unify Japan under their own rule. With the base game, there are a total of 9 factions, each with their own unique bonuses and characteristics, with 3 additional DLC factions. 2 of those I highly recommend trying out: Iko Iki, having their own religion, larger Ashigaru units, and superior warrior monks. Otomo also starts off with a different religion of Christianity and is specialized in matchlock and gunpowder units. The campaign map consists of the 3 Japanese main islands, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu, excluding Hokkaido, which I assume is not that well developed or interesting during this time. For the gameplay, we will often start off with the Ashigaru units, which are the bread and butter during the early stages of the game, and can still be useful later on. The main units I look forward to are the samurai units, who are superior than the Ashigaru in almost every way, but will require longer recruitment time and have high upkeep costs. Cavalry in this game is on the weaker side, where they have extremely poor sustained combat capability and will die off like flies. They are best used to clean up the end of a fight or to do some flanking maneuvers and avoid head-on combat. Most factions have a certain type of units that they specialize in, which gives better stats than normal. For example, the Takeda clan specializes in cavalry, giving some of their cavalry units a lower upkeep cost and better overall stats. The Shimazu clan specializes in katana units. Similarly, their katana units will have a lower upkeep cost and better stats overall as well. The time period of the campaign is from 1545 up to 1600, meaning the combat style of the game can change drastically, from the early stages of using bows, swords, and spears to using matchlock guns at the later stages of a campaign. It is all viable depending on what the players want. However, I would say that the matchlock unit is on the weaker side, especially during an open battle. Even a Yari Ashigaru seemed a lot more useful than matchlock Ashigaru. So perhaps we may actually want to add some mods to enhance our experience and gameplay, specifically for matchlock units. There are also naval warfare in Shogun 2, which I personally find quite tedious to deal with, as enemy clans on the campaign map will often block out trade ports, which is a big part of a clan's income, and will send stacks and stacks of ships our way, especially on higher difficulty levels, becoming hard to defend multiple ports at once. There is a unit equipped with cannon within the naval unit roster, the Cannon Beyond. It sounds cool on paper, but it's actually pretty disappointing in a weak unit. However, there is also the Black Ship event, which is a European galleon coming in contact with Japan for the first time to begin trading. If we are able to capture the ship, it becomes almost impossible to lose in naval battles. There is also a similar yet completely new game that is based off of Shogun 2 that features the modernization of Japan during the 19th century, where it became the norm to use muskets, rifles, and cannons, the decline of the samurai class, which is called a Total War Saga Fall of the Samurai, a standalone game with various of new units like line infantry, riflemen, artillery, and Gatling gun, as well as being able to call in bombardment from nearby naval fleet during a land battle for the complete experience. If we are a big fan of both the gunpowder era and Japanese history, then I highly recommend this version instead. Otherwise, I would start off with Shogun 2 first. Apparently there is an issue on Steam that prevents users from buying Shogun 2 if we were to purchase Fall of the Samurai first, so keep that in mind. Coming in at number 2, Total War Warhammer series, with the newest one, Warhammer 3, released in February 2022. It's the third and final game in the series, and is set in the obviously Warhammer fantasy world, created by Games Workshop for their tabletop wargame. The main thing I would consider before deciding which Warhammer game to get first would be the factions that interest us the most. For anybody who is more interested in the historical genre, but is also wanting to give Warhammer Fantasy World a shot, there are the Empire and Bretonnian faction that we can pick in Warhammer 1. Grand Cathay and Kislev in Warhammer 3. I believe there are some in Warhammer 2 as well, but it is locked behind DLC. The Empire resembles a country in the Europe during the 19th century, with various of unit types like halberdiers, hand cannons, heavy cavalry, and artillery, etc. The Bretonnian resembles medieval France of the High Middle Ages, with big emphasis on chivalry and knighthood. The core unit roster will mainly be made up of the peasant infantry to endless amount of knights. There are also a huge amount of DLCs for all three of these games, and new ones constantly being developed, so we will not really have to worry about running out of content. Each race contains its own unique campaign map mechanics, legendary lords, and an entirely new set of unit roster. Most Total War titles are able to achieve some of this, but never to this extent. In vanilla Warhammer 1, there are a total of 5 unique playable races with the features I've mentioned, whereas in other Total War titles like Three Kingdoms, there are unique faction campaign mechanics, but the unit roster is never this expansive, with some having a few extra special units in the roster at best. The Demons of Chaos faction can give glory to the 4 demon gods after each battle, build settlements after them for special bonuses, and the higher we are for a certain god, the more powerful equipment we unlock for our legendary lord. For the Ogre faction, we have a unique meat consumption mechanic, which can boost our stats right before a battle begins, as well as an offering to further boost our stats over several turns. But if we run out, then we will suffer attrition. We are also able to set up camps, which is actually more important than the regular settlements, since it has more build slots as well as more variety of buildings that unlocks more units and provide higher income. There are the monster unit like the Stonehorn that can be super fun to play around with, as it will absolutely plow through any infantry units, causing absolute mayhem. Each lord and agent have a specific set of abilities. Some have extremely powerful stats, spells, and abilities that can single-handedly change the tide of a battle. One of the most interesting features of the Total War Warhammer series is the Immortal Empires campaign. If we own all 3 Warhammer games, we have access to a combination of the Old World, the Eye of the Vertex, and the Realm of Chaos into one huge campaign map, and being able to play as and against any of the factions out of the 3 Warhammer games, experiencing the true ultimate Total War experience. Whilst the game does look fantastic, there is a glaring issue with the game's optimization, not in battles, but with the campaign map. Specifically, the more turns we play out, the laggier it gets, and at some point it becomes a little annoying. Warhammer has the biggest player base out of all the other Total War titles, with Warhammer 3 being at the top of concurrent players at all times. This means that not only will the game receive the developers' continual support, the multiplayer scene for Warhammer 3 is also thriving, where we can play ranked matches as well as multiplayer campaign with randoms that we have never met. I mention this specifically because multiplayer is definitely not as prominent in any of the other Total War titles. Finally, at number 1, Total War Three Kingdoms. Released in May 2019, is set in ancient China during the turbulent period known as the Three Kingdoms era. This occurred between the years 2020 and 280 AD, with China being divided into 3 main kingdoms: Shaowei, Shuhang, and Eastern Wu. However, the game's starting date is at an earlier period, which is during the downfall of the Eastern Han Dynasty, the unofficial start of this era, giving us a lot more time to build up our own kingdom. There are a total of 12 starting factions to choose from, such as Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Sun Jian, and Gong Xianshan. Some of these factions have their own unique mechanics, bonuses, and units. calc out one of the recommended campaign, have a scheme mechanic which allows us to spy, sabotage our enemy, or speed up our own progress using its credibility points, which no other factions have. There are the romance mode and record mode that we have to pick before starting a campaign. The romance mode is similar to the Dynasty Warriors game, where the general is extremely powerful that can overwhelm hundreds, if not thousands of enemy troops single-handedly, basically a fantasy mode. For record mode, it is more of the traditional way, where the general is not a superhuman, he will be accompanied by many bodyguards. The romance mode can be fun, as for some factions we get a pretty strong set of starting generals, like Guan Yu and Xiang Fei, or Lu Bu in the Dongzhu faction. There is a new class system for all the generals, where each class will have their own set of buffs and skills, and having a commander or strategist is recommended since they provide units with formations that is much needed in battles. Three Kingdoms is, in my personal opinion, the best Total War game out right now. One of the biggest reasons is that the campaign map experience is the most polished out there, so we get to have a complete experience in both the campaign map and in battles, whereas most other Total War titles excel only in battles. In Three Kingdoms, we can actually form alliances and have long-lasting relationship with our neighbors, especially when the faction leaders have similar personality traits, and the AIs are not solely focusing on us the player, making the game feel that little bit more immersive and alive. There is also the court and character relationship system, where the more prestige we have, the more slots we unlock for our courts to gain various of bonuses by promoting our generals. The relation system is also important, as we should avoid pairing two characters that dislike each other, as it will have certain repercussions, and try to pair two characters that like each other. There are times where we can actually consolidate our territory for as long as we like, without being threatened by multiple hostile factions non-stop, even at legendary difficulty. There is a supply system in play, where if we stray too far from our own territory, we will quickly run out of supplies, which will eventually cause attrition, making us lose troops. It is also important to have peasantry buildings within our settlement, as it will greatly increase our population level, which in turn boosts our local replenishment rate, without the need to sit in a city forever to recover our lost troops. Something interesting is that there are story events that we can follow or deviate from, that will have certain diplomatic benefits or repercussions. There are also quite a few DLCs that introduces new factions with their own unique characteristics. For example, the Yellow Turban Rebellion DLC, which introduces a new set of general type with an entirely new set of unit roster. There are others that introduces a different timeline with various features if we ever get bored of the vanilla experience. However, the last DLC we have received from the developers was Fates Divided back in March 2021, and since then, there has been no expansions for the game. It seems that the developers have moved on, and there are only occasional patch updates for bug fixes. I have read around from Reddit and Steam reviews stating that the game is buggy. Honestly, from my 300 hours of playtime in this game, I have only encountered one minor bug during a battle that pretty much never happened again. So that's it for the 5 best Total War titles in 2023. Do you agree or disagree with my list? What does your 5 best Total War titles look like? And which one is your favorite? Leave a comment down below. So, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more future Total War content. As always, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.